Bonjour à tous. I wrap up the last note on a paper of Dr. Daniel Graham on Anaxagoras as a reductionist. Je terminais le dernier note sur Dr. Daniel Graham par le titre Anaxagoras en réductionniste. Je suis allé en Québec et au Saskatchewan du Québec pour la date, le mot en juillet. Je suis allé dans la cinquième étage, cinquième étage dans la bibliothèque, la bibliothèque, la vie québécoise, la vie Québec à la Université Laval. Je parle maintenant la langue française. Je dois parler la langue française. Pourquoi? Je vais pour la interrogation, pour la unification dans la société, la pays Canada. So we are migrated. All we are migrated. This land is belong to the Inuit and Aboriginal people. And now, like a whole range of the history, we have two kind of the problem. One time, 50% of our energy have to be focused on an interior problem, which is belong to the history of that country. And second part, we have to think to the exterior and global affairs, what's going on, which is very important right now because the clash and crisis in a global and universal is getting escalated and getting more and more. When we talk about interior policy of integration of the migration inside the country, language, upper, lower Canada, French language, English language, two sorts of the religion, Anglican, Catholic. But philosophy is important. Philosophy and way of thinking, they made it shrink and separate and isolated the lower level of thinking of the culture and secularism by Locke, by Hume, by Russell, by Rousseau, by Descartes, by Kant, by Nietzsche, by Hegel, and after too many sociologists behind of that, and historian people behind of that, they could not make a disappear of the bad thinking, but they made this agreement, or as Thomas Hobbes said, convenient, we have to control such a this fighting and bleeding, and they did during the 17th century, 18th century, and 19th century inside of the Europe. And the history of North America had this problem. We had a fighting between South and North, and inside of the United States, for as such we have United States, we had too much struggle for philosophy, for liberation, civil war inside the United States after the revolutionary constitution of United States. And for such a great country inside the Canada, we had too much struggle and fighting for having such a this democracy, for such a this free speak and speech. And the duty of the migrant is to be adaptation and integration inside of the society. But sometimes is not happening by some people, by bad people who has too much money and they are greedy and bad thinking, like a racism, like a discrimination. So they have to control their gate of immigration for entering of this country, because there are too many culture who could not level up to the Western philosophy. And me, who migrated from beside the Caspian Sea, who had a contradiction and paradox in inside of thinking, who am I? I migrated to Canada and I proved that to myself. I am lover to wisdom, to science, to secularism, to philosophy. And this love was in a super humanity, because each philosopher, like Husserl, had a connection with the too many community inside of his association in philosophy. Nietzsche was inside the university, but myself, I was isolated and alone, and I read myself by love to them, and I write for my happiness and to prove my identity. So it doesn't matter I'm not the parliament member, but I know I am more Canadian as other they are, because I found my identity, and my identity is a philosophy and wisdom and science and nature, and this is the main access to follow my life for my kid and other kids, other neighborhood, my city and other city, other province, and whole the country based on a peace, wisdom, and science and technology, good life, and finish the life, because the life span, we are part of the species. And now is getting more and more chaos, and no way, just all extremism have to forget that the life is belong to the science, and life is belong to the peace, and by killing and bleeding is not possible. And this is not related to the religion. Sometimes India and China for border has a problem. When I was in Iran beside the Caspian Sea, always my father had a fighting by neighbors for territory. This is my border, this is my land. And now is happening in bigger scope. So China and India is a, or China and Philippines is not the Abrahamic religion, but this is the nature of human for territory. So ethic, morality, economy, and culture, we need a perpetual peace, and we need increase the culture, and only way is all people all together reading, thinking, helping each other, and increase our consciousness. And that's all. So I wrap up the last note on a paper of Dr. Daniel Graham on Anaxagoras in a reductionist. Now, the comparison of natural philosophy and theoretical philosophy, while written to Democritus, is much more concerned about the alienation of the knowing subject from its object. Thus, critique to logical investigation of Husserl is its metaphysical distinction, while logic in prosteriori is concerned to philosophy of mind, natural philosophy, identity of physicalism and functionalism, sets of entities to be reduced, which at once identifiable and logically distinctness. In other words, rehearsal and reminiscent prosteriori as a spectrum electromagnet MRI on a yes and no in political concept, and qualitative geometry as a priority than quantitative arithmetic. As a scientific ontological priority in new modern logical distinction. One more time, the aphorism of Aristotle, many in one and one in many, or in other words, in neurology, infinite, infinite, and finite in infinite. Henceforth, Anaxagoras' rejection of semantic in birth coming to be and praising this as all attribute to substance, pure materialism when cited, everything in everything, or everything has a share of everything, or there is a portion of everything in everything, or many things are in all things, or all things were together. In other sides said, nothing was manifest as an original chaos because of smallness, no color manifest because of the mixture of all things. Anaxagoras invites us to think of the constituent of a phenomenal substance as a deviant or perceptible under certain conditions, but to think them as a present matter of interattentive, which is in posteriori is ontological, qualitative in priority. Metaphysics is a pluralism, while physics in science or philosophy of natural things discusses on reductionism or individualism, not dualism. At this point, when posteriori as a bridge between priori and posteriori contends on one category, reductionism in philosophy of nature versus philosophy of theory, like a logical investigation of Husserl in his phenomenology, Thus, prosteriori stresses on priority of qualitative geometry or essence of property as a concern for Democritus and my transcendental reason as well. Aristotle himself certainly is a yes and no on a bridge between reductionism and pluralism to conceive fundamental properties of matter in terms of only four powers or energy: hot, cold, wet, and dry. No pre-Socrates philosopher was determined drastically unless Anaxagoras minted it by terms such as the dense, wet, cold, hot, as in Gibbs' chapter we discussed on the energy of bonds in a solid, liquid, gas, or water in terms of physics. What is boundary between being of Plato and Heidegger with substance? The answer is in neuroimagine informatic department nothingness, unless ingredient quality of supersonic magnetic wave in correlative way as a matter in fact. We must be invoked to perceive the relationship between phenomena and existence of elements in ancient Greek stuff as a component of power, while there is something beyond of mixture and separation, which is in prosteriori is quantum and thermodynamic. Anaxagoras as an analytic reductionist when cited, wood cannot be defined but what wood is. Look, touch it, heft it, cut it, drop it in water, put the fire into it, surely is known by acquaintance, while in 21st century prosteriori indicates to polysaccharide and lignin as a Socrates cited dream that not possible analyzed but can be named dream. Plato in Timaeus, but in neuroinformatic research will be done at this century or next one that nothing named just attribute to substance. Thus, in Eleatic epic philosophy tried by epistemology of stuff as a current elements to analyzes the theory of reductionism by acquaintance as a sequence of this experiment in laboratory of nature. Thus, posteriori attempted from priori to posteriori of Kant to reach as such a reality or actuality of Hegel by creation and innovation from theory of Nietzsche into ancient Greek philosophy. Archimedes pointed Anaxagoras' philosophy as an everyday sense of experience. As I quoted, he refers to seed. The real things are just those things one encounters in experience every day. Wood, stone, earth, flesh, and blood. The real is the concrete. Le réel et le concret. What is real is not what you do not and could not look over on overlook. Unseen reality in atomism. What is real is not what you do not and could not look over on overlook. Unseen reality of atomism. Ce qui est réel ne l'est pas ce que vous ne pouvez pas regarder pour voir. Réalité invisible. Ce qui est réel ne l'est pas ce que vous ne pouvez pas regarder pour voir. Reality invisible. What is real is not what you do not and could not look over on overlook. Unseen reality in atomism. Ce qui est réel ne l'est pas ce que vous ne pouvez pas regarder pour voir. Reality invisible. Thus, prosteriori at this point is to make a ostensible one in reality. Donc, prosteriori à ce stade est de en rendre un ostensible dans la réalité. When Anaxagoras has a when Anaxagoras has a topic on subject mixture of several solids or liquids but cannot react together remains posteriori on suspension, emulsion, solubility and saturation point. Car Anaxagoras a une notion sur le mélange de plusieurs solides ou liquides, mais ne peut pas réagir ensemble. Il rappelle posteriori sur la suspension, l'émulsion, la solubilité et les points de saturation. Or in the principle of predominance, Anaxagoras cited what predominates in the mixture manifests as the character of the mixture. Each thing is and was most manifestly that of which it has the most. End of the quote. Ou bien, dans le principe de prédominance, on disait ce qui prédomine dans le mélange se manifeste comme les caractères du mélange. Chaque chose est le plus manifestement ce dont elle est le plus. Whereas now, posteriori, instead of mixture, an apparent character like a shiny, heavy, hard color and quality makes an argument on an unseen reality which combined bonding of atoms to constitute new form of molecule based on a releasing interior energy, Gibbs, or power of Anaxagoras, an utmost known arrangement to reach their ideal in noble gas like a helium, neon, krypton as a staff of Anaxagoras. At this point of view, declare into quality as a priority of quantity. And this is a reality which controls the nature of the whole. Thus, posteriori for passion of trade, in fact, as a concrete searching in unseen reality, as a is not, whereas is in thermodynamic of quantum, as a fundamental of bonds in new forms of matter, as a point of view in substance to be a cause of optimum attribution at this trace of epistemology to reach better prodigal ontology by to reach better prodigal ontology by eliminating primitive category of metaphysics, and above all is modern phenomenology by prosteriori. Anaxagoras means us to infer and perceive, while prosteriori philosophy tries new modern manifestation. Reductionist like Anaxagoras has the equation S as a substance from P phenomenal substance to M matter equal R on a P, which is R relative quantities as the equation, and P phenomenal substance. This is from Dr. Graham, Daniel Graham. Whatever number of is more means there is more of that substance in mixture. In prosteriori, H2O as an infinite formula of ocean calls ontology of water as the essence and way of knowledge for bonding of hydrogen and oxygen, which is epistemology of this formula. Now, in 21st century AD, based on a version of Anaxagoras' atomism of Democritus, we can distinguish between phenomenal and elemental substances by their appearance on the left and right side of the equation, like H2O equal H2 plus half of the one molecule of oxygen. And that admits of a consistent and rigorous reconstruction. Dr. Daniel Graham said that Anaxagoras' physical theory metaphysically and epistemologically bear the marks of a strongly anti-reductionist theory. When cited, a radical pluralist who seeks into not theoretical simplification but robust realism, not hierarchical stratification but ontological leveling. End of the quote. While Tannery Burnett rejected it as a conceived Anaxagoras is a reductionist. Whether or not prosteriori is in its transcendental reason either way of pre-Eleatic monism like a Thales in water or Anaximenes in air, and pluralism Eleatic like Empedocles on water, fire, air, and earth, or Democritus in multitude of atoms, and Anaxagoras reasoning in substance, while prosteriori has its suspension and emulsion as in vacuum, a spectrum of yes and no, when reduces all matter to quantum through the periodic table as a no, whereas infinity, contingency, and possibility of stuffs or matter in forms of the metal and non-metal in their combination of the solid, liquid, and gas, to new innovation of polymer causes pluralism. As a yes, such a philosophy in modern phenomenology at 21st century, which will be remained by myself and after death for generation in humanism as a law or law in superior hierarchy of ontology in nature, a methodology to receive law of nature in epistemology by explanation. This law in reality of ontology, when senses reduces to atoms in Democritus, as for him flavors to shape, and for prosteriori to chemical formula, like a banana flavor is isoamyl acetate C7H14O2. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.